create the meeting to order.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Three supervisors are present.
Okay, also let the record show that Michael Bubble is present from Joint Services Committee. Citizen comment. Any citizen wish to speak? Please state your name and address.
My name is Terry Ruck, and I live at 8815 Lakeshore Drive, Pleasant Prairie, Wisconsin. The nomination of Albert Gonzalez and Xavier Solis to the Racial and Ethnic Equity Commission, the REEC, has been met with an outcry from people across all racial and political backgrounds. Those voices express the reasons for the opposition far better than I could. So I'll not try to amplify it, but I respectfully urge the county board to reject the slate when it comes back from committee. As a community, we expect people who serve a role in government to believe in the work that they are appointed and to support that mission. The commission, as originally appointed, consisted of dedicated citizens with stellar credentials who use their personal experiences and expertise to serve the commission's mission to, quote, realize greater racial and ethnic equity and dismantle racism in Kenosha County. The report was presented to the Executive Committee on February 23rd that included statistics that Black people in Kenosha County are arrested at a rate almost 7 times higher than people who are white. This data supports the nationwide analysis that shows Black people are arrested at a higher rate than white people in hundreds of police jurisdictions. The data also backs up past research that shows Black people are disproportionately incarcerated in the United States when compared to the population, to their population. The commission report was not meant to be all-inclusive of every study or every detail of every crime, nor to reflect every community conversation during the listening sessions, but was to be a baseline to determine whether or not there were disparities and whether further investigation was warranted. So given the findings, the committee appropriately recommended that a qualified independent consultant take a deeper dive into the law systems to understand the numbers and the factors contributing to the discrepancy and recommend how to address them. The REEC fulfilled their mission exactly, purposefully, and admirably, just as requested. They didn't skew the report with personal opinions and biases, as was insinuated, but in a blatant disregard for the REEC and the voices of the people of Kenosha County. The Executive Committee voted 5-0 to reject the findings. I asked the Executive Committee and this board to consider a motion to revisit the report, to accept this baseline report and statistics that show a disparity in arrests, and agree to have a professional independent consultant provide structure to interpret the data, add to the data, identify and resolve any institutional racism that might exist. We do not need to fear examining our practices. Inequalities discovered can be unveiled to create equitable outcomes for everyone. This work is not a sprint, but a marathon, and not just by Kenosha County, but by cities across our nations. It requires looking at systems and agencies that contribute to these statistics. It is not accomplished in 1 year, and certainly in not one report. It is time for Kenosha County, along with our nation, to take affirmative steps to eliminate the racial disparities in its criminal justice system when shown they exist. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizen comments? Please state your name and address.
Hello, my name is Brad Backer, 4426 Street. As a former member of the Kenosha County Racial and Equity Commission and a county resident, I'm writing to encourage each of you to take a tangible, consequential action to address the problems of race which plague our community. I've handed out tonight to each of you a copy of the Commission's report concerning arrests and race, which was just referred to. That report disclosed that the Wisconsin Department of Justice showed that Black adults and juveniles in Kenosha County were 6.7 and 5.5 times more likely to be arrested in 2021 than their white counterparts. These publicly available data were viewed as sufficiently concerning to investigate the reasons for this apparent disparate impact and to hire an independent investigator to analyze the data and make recommendations as to their causes and recommend solutions where they are appropriate. Your executive committee does not want you to see this report. It voted 5-0 unanimously at that meeting not to recommend forward. It rejected this report. None of the 5 supervisors who voted to reject it offered anything to show that Black people were arrested at appropriate rates compared to white persons. Instead, they merely quibbled about the data. Supervisor Decker voted to turn down the report because the data reflected arrest decisions made by law enforcement other than county sheriffs, or to distinguish between mandatory and discretionary arrests. Supervisor Rodriguez objected because the report ignored Latinos. Supervisor Thomas was troubled by the Commission's failure to consider other data or the City of Kenosha's action roadmap, notwithstanding his failure to show the Commission anything inconsistent with the Wisconsin Department of Justice data. And Supervisor Nordigian criticized the Commission for, quote, not turning over every rock, unquote, before issuing the report. Indeed, there is much to know, much more to know about how racism might manifest itself in Kenosha County. Consequently, it was disturbing that the Kenosha County Board's leaders didn't want the County Board to even consider these disturbing statistics or to hire an independent expert to get to the bottom of this persistent, disproportional treatment. And it is bizarre and offensive that your executive committee did nothing, in the words of Supervisor Nordigian, to turn over even one single rock. Your executive committee merely posed rhetorical questions intended to suggest that possibly during 2021, Black adults in Kenosha County were only arrested at some unspecified lower rate than 6.7 times the rate applicable to white counterparts. Such cynical inaction does nothing to advance the discussion or to improve community well-being. As the Commission's arrest report noted, even the appearance of racial unfairness by law enforcement is a serious community problem, which requires prompt, consequential action by government. The common denominator between your executive committee's ostrich-like behavior and County Executive Kirkman's absurd nominations to fill 2 commission vacancies is a determined refusal to acknowledge that there might possibly be race discrimination in our community. If the leaders of Kenosha County have a genuine interest in addressing concerns about racial and ethnic equity in our community, doing something might be a great place to start.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak?
Yeah.
Ma'am? Come on up. You were up there before, sir. She was up there before. Okay, that's fine. Go ahead. If it's okay with her, no. Please, sir, you go ahead. And then the lady back there, she will go next.
Good evening. Harold Green, 6730 111th Avenue, Kenosha, Wisconsin. The information you just received from Mr. Backer are the numbers that were given to us from both the state, DOJ, and the sheriff's department. These are not numbers that we made up. In 2021, there was a report called the Police Scorecard. It was the first nationwide public evaluation of policing in the United States. Here's an excerpt from the data they used found in the Kenosha County Sheriff's Department. Disparities in arrests for low-level offenses by race and ethnicity. Black people were 5.7 times more likely, and Latinx people were 1.6 times more likely to be arrested for low-level nonviolent offenses than a white person. Again, these numbers are clearly similar to the report we sent. Again, these are not our numbers, but numbers from a different report. There's obviously a pattern here that needs to be researched. This is our recommendation to the executive committee. You need to hire someone that has the expertise to research the how and the why of these numbers. We don't have that expertise. We told the executive committee that a couple times already. I volunteered to be on the commission not to point my finger at any one particular person or department. I believe there is a fair amount of racism in Kenosha, and I wanted to identify it so we as a county could try to fix or improve the racial environment in Kenosha. Last week, Supervisor Thomas said that the county executive didn't have anything to do with my resigning from the commission. The fact that I discussed this with her in October of last year, and she told me she was going to appoint new commissioners in November. And the fact that she said she wants to see the commission succeed, but her failure to appoint qualified applicants and her failure to appoint an African-American woman as requested, but instead appointed an individual who had already stated he doesn't believe racism exists, clearly shows that there's not enough seriousness about this commission. At the last county board meeting, an individual who doesn't want the commission to exist stood here and also lied to discredit the commission. He said I wore a Black Power hat, but as you can see, this is the same hat I am wearing clearly shows that it says Black Pride. For those of you that know me around the city for years, I wear Negro League jackets. I wear Buffalo Soldier hats. I wore Tuskegee Airmen hats. I'm sorry that offended that individual, and I'm not going to stop wearing them because he wants me to, or he feels that it's discriminatory. He said all the commission did was argue, but I asked you, what body of people trying to solve tough issues don't argue? He stated that there were racist comments about white people in the meetings. That is also a lie. If there were racist comments made, then shame on the commissioners for not calling me on it during the meetings. I assure you, I wouldn't have someone that said a racist comment to me. No, while we didn't always agree, I respected the comments and input of all commissioners. But that's probably because this individual doesn't understand what a racist or racism is. Racism is systemic, or an institution trying to impose superiority over different races or ethnic groups. This gentleman at the last meeting said he served all over the world and that racism is just in our head. I too have served all over the world, but the most racism I have ever faced is right here in this country I served and fought for. It's not in my head that I had to attend segregated schools. It's not in my head that there is still a significant gap in education between Black and white students, especially in Wisconsin. It's not in my head that Wisconsin has one of the highest incarceration rates for Black people in the country. It's not in my head that Black parents have to worry about their children when driving while Black. But he, and most of you in this room, your families, and I include the county executive, have probably never, ever experienced racism. If an individual calls someone a racist name, that doesn't mean you're facing racism. It might mean you're facing a racist or an incredibly stupid person. This commission can do a lot to educate the community, but only if you give it the proper support and resources to succeed. I encourage you to do so by appointing people that are willing to work hard and make the commission a success. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Yes, sir.
Howard Boone, 7817 South Bend. Wearing my hat because I had to hurry and get back because the Badgers are playing basketball in the NIT tournament. I have to practice my dribbling, of course. But to quote my mother, which I'll be doing, if I have to take my hat off, she said, when you're inside, you take your hat off. I spoke to the committee last week, so there'll be some repetition here. And that last week I was in the middle of the celebration because my birthday was Saturday and I celebrate all the way to St. Patrick's Day, which is 7 rigorous days, but I did it. My mother often said, there are 2 types of people in the world. They're the Irish and the ones who want to be Irish. She said it often enough. But I really wanted to bring to your attention, which has been done in many ways, a concern that came up immediately when I read in the paper about the appointments to the Equity Commission. If only Jim Cruiser were here. I knew him for 10 years. I didn't know what political party he was with. I was with him at Slugs Golf League, simpletons lacking useful golf skills. And that's what we focused on all the time. But he did a job that was reverberated, I think, by the community. That after 2 years ago, the worst thing in Kenosha's history occurred, and the Kenosha people gathered together in beautiful concord to make things better. I mean, I think everybody, there's an upbeat sort of a feeling that, in the community. Businesses are coming here. St. Patrick's celebrated Friday, Saturday, people running around the street in all green, stuff like that. That was a signal of a strength of the community. That strength is going to be sapped by the deliberations that I've been made aware of. My mother, I would quote my mother again when she said, felt somebody was doing something out of line. She would say pretty emphatically, "You should be ashamed." And she meant it, and I mean it, if you let this go. I could shorten the data that the people gave you before by saying an assertion that nobody has refuted. And that is, if Jacob Blake were white, he wouldn't have been shot. If the Rittenhouse kid had been Black, he would have been disarmed, if not arrested. That's speculation, but nobody really has given a strong argument to refute that notion. I also made the suggestion that a guy like Jim Cruiser, yeah, oh, really good idea. NAACP is a fairly well-known organization throughout this country and the world. If they were given the task of appointing people to this committee, a simple, no real big deal, the problem would be solved. If there's fighting, unbelievable, immature fighting about who goes on that committee by people who are in charge, I'd be embarrassed. I would really be embarrassed. So I wish all of us well, and I would like to see the community continue its upward, beautiful tread through life and things. But if this wrench is thrown into our longevity or buoyancy, it's your fault. Thank you.
Thank you, and happy birthday. Please state your name and address.
Good evening, my name is Pamela Mundling. I live at 7327 11th Avenue here in beautiful Kenosha. And I'm going to take a slightly different tack than everybody else has so far. I appreciate the county executive for the appointments she's made so far. She's had a breadth of people, not the full breadth of races, because she's only been in office for a year. She's done a little bit so far. I appreciate her appointments. I appreciate the depth. I appreciate the fact that there's some new blood and there's some old blood. There's some people who've been around for a while and they want to be on the same committee and they enjoy the committee and they're qualified, and so she's reappointed them. I appreciate the fact that there's been some spirited discussion about the appointments, that people are willing to speak their heart and listen to other people speak their heart. That's what makes America, America. In closing, I just want to say I hope we can all continue to work together and learn from each other and grow as people, because that's why I love Kenosha. Thank you.
Thank you. Please state your name and address.
I am Gail Clark Taylor of Kenosha, 7624 18th Avenue. Excuse me for a minute, my screen disappeared. Well, I would like to join my voices to those who have objected to the nomination of 2 people to fill the spots on racial and ethnic and racial equity commission. I cannot say any more to add to their statements already. But I would like to add to my statement about the 3rd nomination of Kevin Mathewson to the Emergency Planning Committee. I was appalled to read that he was nominated. Knowing some background about Kenosha Guard, knowing some background about who treats other people, and knowing that he's been banned from Facebook for life for inciting violence. On multiple occasions, he has displayed his skills in public. He is oppositional and confrontational, incapable of working cooperatively with others. His expertise at bullying, harassment, and threatening those who disagree with him is legendary. He is also disdains, hates, and publicly attacks anyone who does not recognize his supposed brains and superiority. He ignores rules while berating others who are not following the rules. These qualifications do not qualify him to be any part of the Emergency Planning Committee. He will not be a help to this community in case of an emergency, he will be a hindrance. He has created a situation in Kenosha that has made us a laughingstock. His nomination, publication of the nomination, resulted in friends and family from all over the country, even a friend from Israel contacting me and saying, what is going on in Kenosha? He has not been at all. I have been in this room, this very room, where he is going around taking pictures of everyone, and then puts down his camera and speaks here at this podium. This is not a way a journalist operates. We have two excellent models for this behavior in this room right now, Joe Potenti and Terry Flores. You would never see them operating in that way. To nominate Kevin Mathewson to act as a journalistic position on the Emergency Planning Commission is a disgrace. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizen comments? Please state your name and address.
My name is Julia Nowicki. I live at 8805 Lakeshore Drive, Pleasant Prairie. My comments also have to do with Kevin Mathewson. It had been my hope that at this point his nomination would be withdrawn. And that is because I think someone talked about this at the last meeting. This nomination is highly divisive. There may be people that are totally in favor of him, totally against him, but he's caused an uproar. And I don't think that this community needs to suffer through this. He's not the only person in this community who can do the job. So it is my wish that Ms. Kirkman would simply withdraw the nomination and allow someone else to be nominated. And if that doesn't happen, I wish that one of the supervisors would talk to her about maybe doing that, or perhaps the group of supervisors, a small group, try to talk her into doing that. If that were successful, of course, the next question would be, who do we get? And there's lots of ways to do that, but I was thinking such a simple way, and it would be such a good thing for Kenosha, is if someone in Human Resources or Ms. Kirkman herself could write a job description for what this person, the credentials and the qualifications that someone like this should have, and post it somewhere publicly, and see there's a lot of talent in Kenosha. See who would say, I have those qualifications, I would like to be considered. Not that she would have to appoint one of these people, that would not be a requirement, but just that this would be a pool of people that she could consider. If neither of these things happen, I just have one other thought. It's all very simple, and that is, if it does go to a vote in April, I do believe that supervisors, any supervisor that has any economic relationship with Mr. Mathewson should disclose that. It can be an employment employer-employee relationship. It can be a contractual relationship. It could be an independent contractor relationship. It could even be a relationship where perhaps Mr. Mathewson performs services for which he gets no compensation from the supervisors. Any kind of relationship that the public should know. I do believe that I think you could certainly say that it might be ethically required according to the ethics code, but even if it's not, the appearance of impropriety is not a good thing. And I think that all supervisors should do this and do it in a timely fashion so that the people in Kenosha can understand if there's any interest involved by any of the supervisors to exalt this person who is so highly divisive to the community to a position where we're supposed to trust him. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizen comments? Please state your name and address.
My name is Charles Keel, 5919 33rd Avenue, Kenosha. I am here to voice my support for the ordinance change for the Kenosha County Sheriff Department hiring process. I believe streamlining the process to bring the most skilled and experienced candidates into our ranks is imperative. However, I would like to suggest an additional improvement. Lateral candidates should be eligible to forego the written examination and eligibility list. If If applicants are law enforcement certified and have prior experience, their employment should be at the discretion of the sheriff of Kenosha County in a background check. Our neighboring counties have already adopted similar policies for lateral transfers. The county, for instance, only requires a passing of a polygraph test and a set of interviews, while Racine County only requires a background check and an interview with the sheriff. At a time when law enforcement is in dire need of qualified, experienced officers, it should be a priority to make the hiring process as simple as possible for those with qualifications and experience looking to serve Kenosha County.
Any other citizen comments? Please state your name and address.
Tamara Weber, 5122 23rd Place. I was not planning on getting up here tonight to speak, but here I am. In regards to the Racial Ethnic Equity Commission, Citizens Commission, I've been at those meetings. The appointees that were previously on, and a few that are still on, they are not stellar individuals. I've been at those meetings. I have not seen many of you at those meetings. And the two gentlemen sitting behind me, how dare you throw Supervisor Thomas under the bus the way you did. Supervisor Thomas gave them things to look at. He's a critical thinker. He looks under the surface, and they refuse to look at it. I'd like to see more of you at those meetings. We need more critical thinkers in this world and in this community. And I support Samantha Kirkman's appointments, both to the commission and in regards to Kevin Mathewson. In regards to the Citizens Commission, we need people that represent the county, not the city. If we look at the demographic makeup of the county, we should have 1 Black individual, 2 Hispanics, and the rest of them should be Caucasian white people. So let's go back, take a look at why this commission was formed, and make sure that the county is represented, not the city. The city has a commission. They've done their work. When they had their listening sessions, not one person came out and talked about what the listening sessions were about. I was there. Listening sessions held in the city, so the city people could come to these listening sessions and speak out. Why were they not held in the county? Well, it's too hard for the people in the city to get to the county. I was there, I heard what was said, and I'm just disgusted at what I heard tonight, absolutely disgusted. And if you really want to be a part of the rest of you that I'll come here to speak out, come to those meetings. Let's get people on the committee. If you want to continue this commission, get people that are in the county and get them in here. Thank you.
Any other citizen wish to speak? Please state your name.
Jody Mearhoff, 7220 First Avenue. Mr. Green and Mr. Becker, thank you so much for your tireless work
Please speak into the microphone.
in attempting to address systemic racism in our community. You are appreciated by so many people. Thank you. The county executive's appointments should never be people who brought shame and notoriety to our community. They should never be shocking or seen as subversive, and they should certainly never be people who have been labeled dangerous and banned from a social media platform for life. It seems such an obviously low bar, so I'm struggling to understand why our county executive bypassed the many skilled, uncontroversial people to appoint alarming choices that have once again drawn the attention of newspapers across the state to what is happening in Kenosha. and not in a good way. Up until now, the county executive has appointed over 36 people without any individual group or organization speaking out. These appointments are so controversial. A conservative leader in Kenosha, who I thought I would never agree with on anything, wrote a VOP letter to the newspaper this week saying Kirkland has jumped the shark. I agree. Does anyone think for a moment that's a sign of good, thoughtful, conservative government? One of the county executive's appointees openly spoke in this room against the reason the commission has been appointed to exist. Another subverted law enforcement, and as a result, armed vigilantes came to our city. Kirkman appointed a person who is on the list of dangerous individuals and organizations. He is banned for life from the very social media platform he would have to use for the county's public communications. How's that gonna work? What could possibly go wrong? When I wrote to share my concern about that appointee, she replied that he would have a limited scope in our county government. I think most reasonable people would agree that any controversial, dangerous person should have no role in our government, regardless of how limited the county executive thinks it might be. People from across the county, including conservatives, have spoken publicly against these appointees. The area's leading Hispanic organization has spoken out against one of the Hispanic men that's been appointed. Supervisors, a yes vote on these appointments will tie you to these individuals for the rest of your political life. You'll be associated with any outrageous action they commit in the future. At the last county board meeting, a woman spoke about these appointments, saying they do not reflect good conservative government. They reflect cronyism and corruption. Also at the last meeting, a man passionately told this board that he had left the side of his dying father-in-law because the cronyism and corruption obvious in these appointments was so blatantly upsetting to him, he felt he had to come and speak to all of you. How sad is that the actions of our county executive are so terrible it drove a Kenosha citizen to do that. There are at least 3 first-time speakers at the meet who attended the last meeting who are so upset about what is going on, they felt they had to come and speak. One live streamed the meeting so that his 24,000 followers could watch. Your corrupt actions are waking up our community to how dangerous our local government can be when it is in the wrong hands. A first-time speaker at the last meeting reminded us that we must hold supervisors responsible who approve these appointees, that we must vote them out of office. She was amazing. I hope she runs for office. We have some great, thoughtful supervisors sitting on this board right now who are working to do what's best for this county and to tackle the very serious issues we face. I hope I've thanked you enough for what you do. Those supervisors, regardless of their personal political beliefs, don't support this hyper-partisanship and corruption. Thank you to all of you who are fighting for good government. But I hope the people behind this corruption understand that the community sees what you're doing, and we won't accept it. This is not about one political party or another. This is bad government, and we will not let a group of corrupt cronies stay in charge of our county government. I encourage everyone who is upset and concerned about what they're seeing.
We have 10 seconds left.
To not just vote, but to talk to their neighbors and friends and tell them what's going on in Kenosha County and vote these people out. Signature gathering starts in December. Elections are next April. Together we can join together to elect officials who will not support corrupt government, but who will work for the people of Kenosha County. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizen comments? Any other citizen comments? Please state your name and address.
David Lockwood, 12556 Street. Different topic, and I'm speaking to what all of you can do going forward, especially I attended the February 23rd Executive Committee meeting where they heard and rejected the report from the Racial Equity Commission. And just mismanagement. I think you can do much better, because whenever a board creates a commission, the board's responsibility is to give them a sound remit, tell them what they want to be studied and what the board wants to be advised on. Then, as the commission gets rolling, they need to make sure that they have what they need. Do you have the proper resources? Are you looking at the proper data? All of that was clear in that meeting, that none of that happened. There were no check-ins along the way where the executive committee checked with the commission to make sure that things were on track. Are you going to be able to deliver the report that we requested? So it gets to the final meeting, and clearly the executive committee didn't know anything about the report that was going to be delivered. That should never, ever happen, right? Because you want to, if it's not what you want it to be, you want to give them a chance to go back and fix it. No, it just got to the end and it was like, wait, we reject this out of hand because you used the wrong database, you looked at the city instead of the county. That should have been ironed out many months ago. So please, Management 101, just do the things that a commission is supposed to do, that the board is supposed to help the commission do. And I hope you do that, because this is an important commission, really is. And it can really make our county better and stronger. And I hope you're willing to just admit those mistakes and move forward and do better, because I know you can. And I hope all the other directors of committees that are setting up commissions do the same thing. Just sound management is what Kenosha County needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizen comments? Any other citizen comments? Any other citizen comments? Citizen comments are closed. Okay, I have a couple comments. But before we do that, if there is no objection, I would like to switch item number 12 and 13. The order of number 12 and 13 by 314 first and plus. If there is no objection, to do that. Okay. Just a couple things. Last Wednesday, the county executive and I and others from county staff had the opportunity to meet with members of the Kenosha Innovation Neighborhood Board of Directors. The first steps of the project will include the construction of roads and other infrastructure beginning this year, followed by the construction of an innovation center building and a new building to house Lakeview Technology Academy. Later phases are expected to include business incubator and office space, commercial space, and residential units. The KIN board is seeking the county's input on this development, and I have invited them to present to the executive committee in the coming months. Also, a presentation from, I hope I said this right, Carlson Detman Consulting on the final results and recommendations of the classification and compensation study is on tonight's agenda for referral to the Finance and Administration Committee. I have been informed that the staff member who worked on the report is leaving the consulting company soon and will be replaced before this will go before the committee on April 13th. So that the entire board can ask questions and receive information directly from the person who worked on the report. I'm going to schedule a committee of the whole meeting 1 week from tonight in this room at 6:30 p.m. I encourage supervisors to take this opportunity to hear directly from the consultant. Also, I just want to add that last week, the Lieutenant Governor came to Kenosha, visit many business places, I guess, but she also visited and toured Brookside. I was part of the people that came to the tour. It was a very good experience, and we had a very nice discussion. And of course, we tried to pusher in getting us. That concludes my report. Supervisor reports.
Just a couple of updates from the reports from Public Works from our meeting last week. The Highway K 94th Court to the Union Pacific Railroad, that's scheduled to resume to start in June of 2023, this June. I asked why that was so late. The asphalt plants don't open until May, and there's still school going on with what happened last year. They don't want to run across the school issues. So they want to leave everything open as is until after school is over with. And everything then should be completed by the end of July. The roundabout at County Y and A, there was a public information meeting, pre-construction meeting. That will be shut down next week with the detours around it, so they can start working on that. And I think everyone got an email today from Joe on that. There are various culvert replacements throughout the county, and due to weather, they were pushed back a little bit. But I think if they aren't finished now, they will be very, very soon. We were scheduled to open up our golf courses on the 17th. March. That didn't happen, but stay tuned. That should be happening soon. And of course, we are looking for more help throughout the parks and golf courses for the summer. Anyone looking for a job, please send them to the county. Other than that, County Highway EM in Twin Lakes is now under construction, and that there's a resolution tonight that I'll talk a little more on that. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Grady.
Mr. Chairman, I'll wait for Supervisor Nordegan to make his statement about the construction in Twin Lakes later this evening. Thank you.
Any other supervisor wish to speak? Okay. Supervisor Geschke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of brief updates from some exciting developments happening in District 7. Just to echo, I was at the meeting along with Chairman Nudo to learn more about the Kenosha Innovation Neighborhood project. That's the redevelopment of the old Chrysler site. And as the chair mentioned, there are lots of exciting developments that we're going to actually see happening here literally in just the next few months as the weather warms, new roads going in and new construction starting. So keep your eye on that, and we're excited about those projects. Also nearby in the Uptown area, the Gorman project on the west side of 22nd Avenue. Many of you have probably been seeing that construction going on. It's currently a green building with the weather wrap. Windows are all nearly in. And the exciting news is that the main floor, the street level, which will be dedicated to commercial space, is going to be completed by the end of this calendar year. The upper levels with the residential units will require some additional time, but just wanted to give a brief update about the street level commercial projects going in there. First of all, a portion of that will be dedicated to a new children's library for the Kenosha Public Library System. And that project will specifically be geared towards 5th graders and below, and will provide not only books and things along those lines, other resources, but also will help aid in filling in the gap with literacy programs, encouraging resources and things along those lines for families all throughout the county, and specifically in that surrounding neighborhood, to be able to thrive in their academics and education. Also, just to note, that will be funded completely with a portion of ARPA funds, and then also private donations and endowment. So that children's library will be completely funded through the COVID funding and private donation endowment. And so if you are interested in donating to that, or if you have connections with an organization that might, then I would encourage you to reach out to the new children's library going in the Uptown area. The other two commercial street level spaces will be a grocery store and then a restaurant. And that grocery store is an exciting option. It's not going to be a full-blown, pick and save or festival foods style grocery store, but it's going to be a great step in the right direction to address the food desert that exists in that neighborhood, in my neighborhood. And it'll provide fresh fruits and vegetables, produce, meats, bakery, so on and so forth to the residents within walking distance of that area. And so that's an exciting development. Finally, one other update. Many of you may know it as the Brown Bank Building, just behind the development I was referencing, the Gorman Bank Building. That also is getting new windows and lots of exciting renovations happening inside. And that's going to provide some really special after-school mentoring opportunities. Several different educational institutions are going to be based there. And that'll provide some great high-quality after-school mentoring and positive development programs for youth all across the county, but specifically in the surrounding neighborhoods. So again, lots of exciting things happening in District 7, and I appreciate your excitement along with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Carroll.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Nudo. My supervisory report is going to be about the PDEC meeting that we had on March 8th, last week, Wednesday. As you all know, there's two different parts to the meeting. The first is the education part. So the update on the educational side is that the youth and government applications are expected in, and actually we have them. I talked with Erica Ness, and she said that she received 24 applications for 18 positions, which are 16 positions plus 2 alternates, and that the interviews are taking place. 12 of them were yesterday, 12 of them are tomorrow, and that there's 5 to 6 current youth and governance members that are interested and applied again to continue on. The interview committee scores and recommendations will come to the PDEC, to the next PDEC meeting in April. So we're looking forward to getting our new slate of candidates there. We also had VJ Padgen there, and he talked to us about the spotted lanternfly, which is a nuisance invasive insect. It's a species from China, Vietnam, and Japan. First came to the United States in 2014. Mostly in Pennsylvania is where the infestations currently exist, and more closer to the East Coast, although they are spreading through transportation corridors into the Midwest and into southeast Wisconsin is the highest area of risk in Wisconsin. There's important things to note about this, that there's a preference for host plants that they like to go to. The tree of heaven is a big one of those, but it's also grapes, black walnut, and very acidic type of plants, which helps them to be a defense mechanism. Southeast Wisconsin has the highest risk for spread due to our climate, and that they do a tremendous amount of damage to the host plants through feeding in the sap, excreting the honeydew, stressing the plants, causing spot sooty mold, and it's going to cause loss of crops and property damage. The crops, one of the main ones is the grapes, is what we've been told. So I think it's important for the county to pay attention to this, and I'll be staying in touch with PJ throughout the meetings that we have to understand how we can help in our community become aware of this, because it's a serious problem in Pennsylvania and the East Coast. The second part of our meeting was the planning and development, and we had before us the non-metallic mine expansion that Daniel and Julie Rovers brought forward with Lafarge, which is the parent company for Meyer Material, who has been the longtime operator of the non-metallic mine out there. We had 3 meetings on this and 1 site visit as a committee. So October 12th of last year, February 8th of this year, the site visit was on March 1st with all the committee members attending, and then our final meeting was on March 8th. You see before us in our meeting that there's resolution number 82, which deals with the comprehensive plan amendment, ordinance number 13, which is also a comprehensive plan amendment, and zoning ordinance, or ordinance number 12, which is the rezone. All 3 of these work together. on there. And one thing that you don't see on here is the conditional use plan that staff worked with the committee members and the in Lafarge to finalize what the conditions for the use would be. There's going to be some additional monitoring wells, additional reclamation plan. The timeline has also been set so that there's a 5-year limit on the extraction for the additional expansion area of about 23 acres or a little bit more. And then after 2 years after that, there's a timeline where they're going to end all mining at the site. All the mining stops after the additional 5 years, but then the additional 2 years after the 5 for a total of 7 would be when the operations are complete out there. There was also a few other conditions that were enacted, one of them being the well action plan, because there's part of this, the new plan was to create a 20-acre lake or pond area to mine into the water for the aggregates. So again, the Planning and Development Committee, PDEC Committee, voted unanimously in favor of the comprehensive plan amendment and the rezoning, and I ask for your support this evening.
Supervisor Burr.
We oftentimes, since I've been on this board, we've lost a few current supervisors. We've lost a few former county supervisors. Oftentimes in those situations, we haven't been able to speak with those people before they left us. We have the opportunity now to speak with the county supervisor that's more than likely not going to be with us much longer. So I would reach out to many of you to head over to Willowbrook and say your graces, say your thank yous, and speak to Mr. Midori. Mr. Midori both served the city and he also served the county. I'm actually sitting in his former position. I've had the honor of knowing Mark and knowing his life of service to our community, and knowing that it should be an inspiration to many of us, to others. He consistently and constantly gave of himself to ensure our community was a better place to live. So I implore you in the next few days to head over to Willowbrook and have some remembrances and say hi to Mark. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other supervisor? Any other supervisor? Supervisor comments, please.
County Executive Appointments, 36, Ruth Dyson to serve on the Civil Service Commission.
Refer to Judiciary and Law and Finance Committees.
37, Juan Torres to serve on the Board of Health.
Refer to Human Services Committee.
38, Michelle Milsavic to serve on the Kenosha County Library System Board.
Refer to Finance Committee.
New business, Resolution 1 reading. Resolution 76 from the Finance and Administration Committee, a resolution to approve FICA alternative plan for eligible Kenosha County employees. This resolution passed unanimously at the committee. Supervisor Geertsen excused.
Supervisor Rose.
All right, I would move the resolution.
Moved by Supervisor Rose, second by Supervisor Bishop. Supervisor Rose.
All right, thank you. The resolution before you establishes a new system for particularly the part-time or seasonal employee. Instead of contributing to the Social Security, the FICA fund, they would be able to, as an alternative, invest in a group called Precision Group. Mr. Bruce Nelson of that organization is here if you have some specific questions or discussion with him. What this does is will save the county $145,000, but employees will be able to invest that money into this Precision Group as an alternative to Social Security. Say this is not aimed at the full-time career employee, but let's say the seasonal employee who might be working at one of the parks, the golf course, and may be doing this for 1 or 2 or a few seasons. the money that they invest in that program, they will be able to take with them if they leave employment, and most of them do, as these are part-time or seasonal type jobs.
Thank you. Any other supervisor wish to speak? Any other supervisor? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
Resolution 77 from the Judiciary and Law Enforcement and Finance and Administration Committees, a resolution to approve the appointment of Estelina Cooksey to serve on the Civil Service Commission. This resolution passed unanimously at both committees, with Supervisor Geertsen excused.
Supervisor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Move resolution 77.
Moved by Supervisor Rodriguez, second by Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a resolution from the county executive to reappoint Ms. Cooksey to the Kenosha County Civil Service Commission. The past committee and unanimously we ask for the board support tonight.
Any other comments? Any other comments? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
Resolution 78 from the Judiciary and Law Enforcement and Finance and Administration Committees, a resolution to approve the 2022 grant award for year 22 Homeland Security, Wisconsin Emergency Management, HS Alert Bomb Technician Response Equipment 2022. This passed unanimously at both committees, with Supervisor Geertsen excused.
Supervisor Rodriguez.
Move resolution 78.
Moved by Supervisor Rodriguez, second by Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is the grant before you is for $13,300. It increases expenses by the same amount. This money will be used to purchase a new explosives vault and new X-ray tablet or tablets for the bomb squad. Many of you who have been on the board for some time may recognize this grant. It's one we've gotten in the past and hopefully we'll continue to get in the future. Passed unanimously at both committees. I ask for the board support tonight.
Any supervisor comments? Any supervisor comments? Seeing none, this requires a 2/3 vote, so we're going to have a roll call.
Resolution passes unanimously. Resolution 79 from the Judiciary and Law Enforcement and Finance Administration Committees, a resolution to approve the 2023 Wisconsin OJA Multi-Jurisdictional Drug Task Force Grant for the Southeast Area Drug Operations Group, CDOG. Resolution passed unanimously at both committees, with Supervisor Geertsen excused.
Supervisor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Move resolution 79.
Moved by Supervisor Rodriguez, second by Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Rodriguez.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Before us tonight is a resolution to accept CDOG grants in the amount of $211,792. This is the third year of a 5-year grant. This money is for the Southeast Area Drug Operations Group. As many of you know, we are included in this along with Racine, Dodge, Jefferson, and Walworth counties. I passed both committees unanimously. Ask for the board support tonight.
Any supervisors' comments? Any supervisors' comments? This also requires a 2/3 vote, so we'll have a roll call.
Resolution 79 passes unanimously. Resolution 80 from the Finance and Administration Committee, a resolution to accept and utilize Wisconsin Land Information Program grant funding for the Kenosha County Land Records Modernization Project activities. This resolution passed unanimously at committee. Supervisor Geertsen excused.
Supervisor Rose.
Move the resolution.
Moved by Supervisor Rose, second by Vice Chair Decker. Supervisor Rose.
This is a grant of some $70,000 from the state to assist in the modernization of register of deeds programs to give greater utilization to the program.
Okay. Any supervisor comments? Any supervisor comments? This one also requires 2/3 vote, so we'll be having a roll call.
Resolution 80 passes unanimously. Resolution 81, from the Finance and Administration Committee, a resolution relating to the use of TikTok on Kenosha County-owned devices. This resolution passed unanimously at committee. Supervisor Geertsen excused.
Supervisor Rhodes.
Mr. Chairman, I would defer to Supervisor Rodriguez, the author.
Supervisor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Supervisor Rhodes. I move resolution number 81.
Moved by Supervisor Rodriguez, second by Supervisor Prohl. Supervisor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before you tonight is a resolution to prohibit the use of the TikTok app on any county-owned devices. And additionally, this would prevent privately owned devices from being able to access TikTok while they're connected to the county's devices. Of importance and of note, this exempts the Kenosha County Sheriff's Department should they need to access TikTok for an investigation or whatever means they need to use it for keeping the residents of Kenosha County safe. As many of you have probably heard in the news or online, TikTok, as parent company, is ByteDance, which is based out of China. Under a 2017 Chinese law, any and all businesses operating within China are obligated to provide data, any data that the Chinese government requests on demand. Though TikTok has operations here in the United States and data is held here in the United States, it is still, they're still mandated to share that with the Chinese government. Additionally, you may have seen in recent news there's one other county as of today throughout the state of Wisconsin that has prohibited the use of TikTok inside county government. There are other municipalities as well as an executive order by Governor Tony Evers and our neighbors to the east as well in Michigan and I'm sure other surrounding states. And in the last week or so, quite some steam has been made at the federal level with legislation proposed in both the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate, bipartisan legislation, I may add, along with support from President Biden, who has more recently been verbal about his support for potentially even banning TikTok from operations inside the United States. We often hear from Director Smith about how important it is to keep our infrastructure as secure as it possibly can be. And we're not just dealing with the day-to-day operation, or let me rephrase that. We're dealing with our day-to-day operations here in Kenosha County, but our day-to-day operations affect over 100,000 people. And when folks are paying their property taxes or submitting court documents, oftentimes sealed court documents, sensitive documents, it's important that we keep our residents safe, and it's important that we keep our county's IT infrastructure safe as well. This was not something that Supervisor Decker and myself kind of sporadically thought of. It was something, it was something that was thought of and worked closely with county administration and Director Smith to look into this. There was a great lengths of conversation about what can be done. Example, with the private devices, can we prohibit the use? And that same prohibition would be similar to prohibition we used to block other sites of interest. And so it passed both, or Finance Committee unanimously. I'd be happy to answer any questions. And I see Director Smith is standing to my left, so I'm sure he might be willing to answer any questions should any of my colleagues have any. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm glad to see this document come forward, resolution number 81. Thank you to Vice Chair Decker, and thank you to Supervisor Rodriguez for forwarding this. Also pleased to see Director Smith here, and if he could approach the podium with permission of the chair, I'd like to have him available just to maybe give us a summary of what he sees from his perspective, possible enforcement observation tools, and any detail he cares to add. So if you will, Sean, please give us your perspective.
Thank you. So with the passage of this, we're going to go on ahead and block TikTok from any of the county-owned devices as directed. This will protect anything that's on the county network, county devices that are issued. It also prevent them from accessing it. The real danger, or where the majority of the challenges come in, are really on mobile devices, iPads, phones, where you install the app. The website, while there is some risk at times there, it's not the same level because you're not sharing the same amount of information. So we'll use the different tools that we have available, software that's going to block it, and we'll be able to roll out that policy to all of the cell phones, all of the iPads, any device like that, and then we'll be blocking access to TikTok. We will make the exception as directed for law enforcement. The reality is law enforcement has to have access to this kind of application because there are a lot of things, a lot of information that's shared through it, and they need to have access. They can't be restricted from not doing it. We know in previous times working with law enforcement, it's not something that they do for all of the division. It's done for the people that need that type of investigatory access. So there's really not just everyone is granted carte blanche access to it. It would be only for those that the sheriff's department identifies as necessary.
Anything else, Supervisor Green?
No, that's all. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor US.
Through the chair to Sean, what is the policy going to be if an employee does happen to access TikTok on a county device once this is put in place?
We've worked with HR on that. With it being a policy, anytime there's a violation of a policy like that, we would work with HR, Corporation Counsel, to make sure that it's addressed. With it being something that's got this kind of momentum behind it, we would certainly make sure that gets documented appropriately and allow for those others that would have authority over that kind of thing. So from IT, we implement the policies and the practices on how to block it, but ultimately it's not up to us to take any type of disciplinary action or anything related to that.
So this would be a question for Ms. Tappa?
Yes, Ms. Clara would be the best person to talk to about what happened in the event someone violates county policy.
Okay, to the makers of this motion, of this resolution, did you have any discussions with the HR director as to what would happen to an employee if they did access this?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To answer Supervisor Uhas's question, well, I did not directly have any conversations with Clara. My understanding is that all employees are held to the acceptable technology use policy, or whatever the exact title of it is. And if this passes and is implemented, they're subject to that. So this would be no different if they were visiting any other currently prohibited site or currently misuse their technology in another way. Based on what Director Smith is telling us tonight, it sounds like a flag would be set off within IT. You guys would notify Clara and maybe the Sheriff's Department, and from a disciplinary action standpoint, that is the role of HR and not the role of IT. And I guess I would defer to Clara if that's accurate. She's nodding her head yes.
A violation of our policy would follow the progressive disciplinary process.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else for Mr. US?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other comments? Supervisor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just for clarification, this does not prohibit an employee from accessing TikTok on their own device as long as they're not connected to our network. So if they want to sit on their lunch break in the lunchroom, watch TikTok, as long as they're not connected to Wi-Fi, that's okay. If they are connected to Wi-Fi, it's not going to load. So I just want to clarify that. Thank you.
Any other supervisor? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Passes.
Resolution 82 from the Planning, Development, and Extension Education Committee, a resolution regarding Daniel H. and Julie P. Rovers, owner, Meyer Material Company, doing business as Lafargue Aggregates, Illinois, Inc., agent requesting an amendment to the comprehensive plan amendment from farmland protection and isolated natural resource area to extractive farmland protection and isolated natural resource area in the town of Wheatland. The resolution passed unanimously at committee.
Supervisor Carroll.
Move resolution 82.
Moved by Supervisor Carroll, second by Supervisor Geschke. Supervisor Carroll.
Yes, Chairman Nudo, as stated before, this is the an expansion of the existing aggregate site for the landowners of Daniel and Julie Rovers. Lafarge is the operator of that. There was extensive review through 3 meetings that went into the late hours of the night, and we heard from many residents in surrounding areas that were some were in favor, some were not in favor. And at the end of the day, the board visited the site, took into consideration all different things that were supposed to, and we voted unanimously to approve this. And that's for the board's approval. Thank you.
Supervisor Gross.
The newspaper quoted a number of neighbors in opposition. Were their concerns addressed or overlooked, or just give us some more information on it?
So there were many residents that that live adjacent to the aggregate site. Like I said, there's a few that I spoke to that were in favor of it, and there were a lot of people at the meeting that were not in favor of it. Us as the board members went and viewed the site. Took a tour, spent a couple hours looking it over, and feel that with the conditional use permit that we have attached to this, with the existing use of the aggregate site out there, that we feel that the concerns of the board were addressing to the best of our ability the concerns of the neighboring residents, and allowing the current owners of the property to use their land appropriately.
So one of the neighbors said that her property would probably be depreciated as a result of the expansion. Do you agree or disagree?
I think that's subjective. There's certainly reports that could go either way on that. The Lafarge had a report that indicated there would be potentially some devaluation, but I would think that there's another neighbor that lives there that's very much in favor of it, and there was another gentleman that I talked to that said that, you know, if they were willing to sell, that they were interested in property next to the aggregate site. So I really think it depends on the person, and there's some subjectivity to that report.
And how does this benefit Kenosha County by approving the expansion?
So we're utilizing aggregate resources that are local to the county. This is a finite commodity with the non-metallic mines. There are several others around the area, but as time goes on, these sources get further and further away from where their intended use is. So for the addition of the expansion, we feel that the markets that the aggregates serve would be beneficial to the county and to the county residents, in the fact of having a closer aggregate source, but also trying to limit the amount of time that they're there. We did put a 5-year limitation on the extraction part, and then there's another 2 years for the restoration. That's the latest that it could be right now as it stands with the existing conditional use permit. It's open-ended. There is no firm end date. The initial report at the, from back in 1995 and 96 when it was approved, showed that, you know, it could be anywhere from 10 to 25 years was their proposed timing on this, but the worst case would be up to 40 years, and that's extending out into the 2030s right now. 40 years is from 1995 or 96. So us as the commissioners thought that we were applying a time frame on this and that there was some benefit to the county to do that.
So, and finally, and perhaps the Corporation Council could weigh in on this, if there are people who have some proof of depreciation of their property because closeness and proximity or some other things, are we exposing Kenosha County to taking a property without compensation by approving this permit?
I don't, excuse me, I don't believe that that's a significant risk, Supervisor. The process has been followed. In fact, I would defer potentially to Andy Bueller, who's here, but the piece in terms of the approval of the conditional use permit, several years ago, there was a change in the law. I don't want to say ties our hands, but really puts the it to where if the application checks all the appropriate boxes, there's not a lot of discretion on the part of the county in terms of approving. We can make requests and suggestions for conditions, as the committee did. I think we would have as much, if not more, risk of a claim if we failed to approve the permit, having properly gone through all the processes, as we would the other way around.
That's all.
Thank you. Supervisor Thomas.
Thank you, Chairman Nudo. I've got a question in regards to, does this property now then get reassessed, those 23 acres, from a different property tax base? If we're converting it from protected farmland to?
That's a good question that I don't know the answer to. If Andy, maybe Andy could know the basics. Andy?
I'll answer that the best I can. I mean, I'm not an assessor, but from a standpoint of land, I mean, it's going to be assessed based on the use. Any property is always assessed on the use. Currently, it is agricultural, so then it'd be up to the assessor after the mining activities take place in that property. They would assess it based upon that use and how they do that. That would be the best knowledge I would have on that question.
Just to follow up on that, so we have other mining that already goes on in the county. Are they assessed at a higher rate than if it was just strictly agricultural land? Are you aware?
I am not aware of that. I mean, I would gather that would be the case, but I do not have that information.
Okay. Thank you.
Supervisor Blake.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair to Supervisor Carroll. And I've read some of the comments about the neighbors' concerns with issues such as noise, hours of operation, traffic, dust, etc. Did the operator of the mining concern offer any specific concessions, compromises to the neighbors? Can you detail us if any of that did happen and what the process was?
I'll try to answer as best I can, and if I'd ask Andy Bueller if I missed anything, to please add in anything. There is a perimeter berm around the mine, so the first plan that came before us was to build it to a certain height. I think it was maybe 10 feet. And it was only on two sides. And the revised plan that came back to us in February had it on three sides, one along 376th Avenue, and then also being taller. In the application, they provided a site distance and a view from the western neighbor and from the northern neighbor, which was in Racine County, to basically the berm would block the view into the operations for the duration of the mining activities. As far as dust control goes, I think they're going to be following the same conditional use permit that we have, and we have an independent consultant, Sigma, that monitors it biannually as to make sure that they're following the conditions of the conditional use permit. And if they're not following it, then basically the permit can be revoked. So I don't know if that answered all your questions or if I missed anything that Andy can add on to.
I suppose the boilerplate language is being followed, but I'm more concerned that if a neighbor had a particular concern, like, driveway access, anything that would be just, out of the ordinary, if the mining concern actually stepped forward with a policy change that would mitigate their concerns. I'm just asking for specific instances rather than just the generalities, if there are any. That was my question. Thank you.
Supervisor Grady, there's one other thing that I thought of that certainly was a change to the plan from the original one submitted, and that was the fact that the original plan was to keep the mining activities above the water table. The new mining plan is to go into the water table to a depth of about 15 feet into it. With that, there is an additional monitoring well that is going to be put in near the neighboring residence. Our independent consultant, Sigma Group, reviewed the report that the aquifer report, the hydrology study that was done by Lafarge, and concurred with Lafarge's findings, and that there's going to be additional monitoring taking place to monitor the water level when the mining activities are taking place there. So that is another control that was added into the conditional use plan, and that there's also a well action plan that's going to be submitted by Lafarge by April 12th as part of the conditions to ensure that the neighboring wells will be protected and that they will be repaired if there's any sort of effect from the mining operations on those wells. And that's going to be, again, monitored by the third-party independent consultant that's hired by the county to do that monitoring.
Very well. One final follow-up question. Who hires and pays for Sigma Consulting?
I'm going to state what I've been told by Andy is that the county independently hires the consultant, Sigma, and that the cost of that consultant is paid for by the operator, Lafarge. But the operator, Lafarge, does not have a contractual relationship or partake in selecting who that is.
And I'll just add that I concur with that, although the well action plan will be paid for by the county. But the other studies were paid for by the applicant, but the Sigma was chosen by the county.
That concludes my questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of brief comments from my perspective as a PDIC member. Just want the board to be aware that this application originally came before our board in October, I believe. And we tabled it, we deferred it to a future meeting several times. And we took about 5, nearly 6 months to work with the neighbors, to work with the applicant, to really do our due diligence in order to try to find the delicate balance between the progress of business and industry and the preservation of the quality of life of the residents there. And so we as a committee did take our job very seriously and took a significant amount of time in order to try to strike that balance. As Corporation Counsel mentioned tonight, due to some recent changes in state law, we as a county do have very little discretion in our ability to to deny these type of applications, assuming that they follow the proper procedures and check all the boxes as Lafarge has. As was also mentioned, this mine has been in operation for about 25 years in this area. And the fact of the matter is, if you go back and check the records, there's been virtually no complaints from the surrounding neighbors about their operations. By and large, they've been very good neighbors. They have not been overly disruptive. And so the biggest concern was, if that would continue during this expansion. And so that's why we as a committee took a large amount of time working with, again, the delicate balance of preserving the quality of life for the residents and the progress of business and industry in our community. I think some of the main concerns that we heard from the residents were the water quality. As you may be aware, residents in that area are reliant upon private wells, personal wells on their own property. And so several of them were concerned about the quality of water of their own wells. Would that be affected? And so as Andy mentioned, we have a well action plan that we required that is put in place. Another major concern was a timeline. Well, hey, is this expansion going to go on for 25 years from now? And we heard the residents' concerns, and we were sympathetic towards that. And so that's why we put a hard deadline of 5 years of mining operations, absolutely as the maximum. And then 2 additional years to reclaim that property. Another concern was noise and visual disruption. And as was mentioned, they added additional berms. They increased the height of berms. They repositioned their original plan for the conveyor belt system in order to minimize noise. There are hours of operation as part of their conditional use permit that are in place. And so although we are very limited in our discretion to approve or deny this, we do have the opportunity to put conditions in to help balance the quality of life for the residents there. And I want to assure you that we as a committee, we all worked hard in order to strike that balance between the progress of business and industry and the preservation of the quality of life of those residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair to Supervisor Carroll, typically these go to the town or village board. Do you know why the town board of Wheatland did not take this up and it was given to the county?
So we understand that the planning commission at the town had voted in favor of the expansion, although it was the original plan, not the revised one, that was drafted because of the hard timeline that the county put on it. As far as the town board goes, what I had heard is that there was a motion made, there wasn't a second, so it wasn't brought forward to the town. Ultimately, we as a county would like to get the either favorable or non-favorable recommendation from the town. That was another reason why we delayed our decision on the April 12th meeting, was to give another 90 days for the town to come back with a recommendation one way or the other. It was never added to the town board agenda to be voted on. And in fact, I think there was some communication with their attorneys that they were not going to be making a decision on it. So we felt it was incumbent upon us as the county who manages the planning and zoning for the townships that we have to vote and make our decision based on what we have in front of us and what the plan was according to our ordinances.
Okay, well, I just hope that this doesn't set a precedent for other towns and villages when they don't want to touch a hot topic. They find a way to circumvent the process and they push it off onto the county. Because that's what I think happened here, is that this was a politically motivated hot issue and the town of Wheatland didn't want to deal with it. So it was given to the county. And I appreciate the committee's work because I know you put in a lot of long hours. You did a lot of work on this. But people are elected, whether you're on the village board or town board, to make those hard choices. And just because you may not want to doesn't mean you automatically get to push it on the county board. And I just hope that this doesn't set a precedent in the future for other municipalities if they feel that they don't want to touch this because it's a hot topic, that it goes to the county. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Supervisor Brescia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, Supervisor Gasky, thank you for utilizing most of my words, and I echo everything that he said. This was a very, very deliberate process, and to Supervisor Uhas's concern regarding the village or the town, we took every opportunity to get their insight and their perspective on it. However, I don't know why they weren't able to put it back on their agenda specifically. However, we were advised that it would not be coming back to us. We were also advised that as this is a zoning question, it comes to the county through the applicant, and it is our responsibility to take it up. Any information from the community is advisory only. It is not directionally required. So we appreciate that. The other thing I'd like to call out is through Council's office, Mr. John Moyer did provide us a very, very extensive understanding of what our role, responsibility, and requirements of the law are. We studied that extensively, and we applied that to our understanding as well. We worked very, very closely with legal counsel for Mr. Supervisor Rose's question to make sure that we were applying the law and acting accordingly. So in our minds, I believe all of us would say we did our due diligence, and Supervisor Franco went above and beyond and decimated a pair of tennis shoes as we toured the pit. So we did everything that we possibly could. Cited earlier this evening in the discussion was Wisconsin Act 67, adopted in 2017, which does create very specific requirements. A couple of things called out. The act disallows permitting decisions to be based on personal preferences or speculation. It requires substantial evidence in approving or denying a conditional use permit. It goes on to say that to require that where an applicant meets or agrees to meet all of the requirements and conditions specified in the ordinance or imposed by a governing body, the conditional use permit shall be granted. We applied extensive conditional conditions within the cup. In our opinion, my opinion specifically, Lafarge went above and beyond to address every question that was brought to them. They went above and beyond to exceed, in my mind, the expectation that was placed by the residents. When you view the site from three sides from the roadways and you inspect it yourself, I believe what you'll see is within 5 years, we'll have a beautiful piece of prairie that exceeds what it currently looks like. The areas that they've restored at this point within the mine operation itself are restored either to agriculture or to prairie land. And as one supervisor during the tour said, well, that doesn't look like it's been mined over there, but that was restored land. It was under agriculture, it was corn last year. Looks as natural as before the mining operation began. So clearly I supported it through committee, and I'll support it again this evening, but I appreciate all the comments that have been made. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Rodriguez.
Not convicted. I didn't mean to turn my light on.
Oh,
thank you.
I believe there is no other supervisors here. Sorry.
I kind of want to echo what Supervisor Uhas said. I don't remember in my 7 years if we've ever gotten anything like this that wasn't referred from or approved from any of the municipalities in the county. Or if there has, it's been very, very infrequent. I think that it's a dangerous precedent if we, obviously this is going to pass. I don't think that we need to be doing that in the future without getting the approval of townships and other municipalities. Question through the chair to PDEC chair or to Andy. Were there any costs incurred by the county that had it gone through the process of the town of Wheaton they would have covered?
I'm going to defer to Andy for that.
I don't know of any, so Ian can be more detailed.
Question?
Because of the difference or the change of process here, were there any costs incurred by us that had the town of Wheatland gone through the process, they would have covered those costs?
No, no additional cost. The process still followed the same procedure, just without their input.
Okay. Well, again, I do appreciate everything that the committee did and what your office did, so thank you very much. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Just real quick, the process was the normal process. It did go through the town. The town just didn't decline or recommend it. So I want to point that out. But there was one time in recent history where the village of Salem Lakes completely passed the football to the county on the Silver Lake Protection Management District. They totally just walked away and kicked it to the county. So that's what we don't want the precedent set for again. But they were allowed to, but they shouldn't have.
Okay. I don't believe I have anybody else on the board that wants to speak. I'm going to clear it. And is there anybody else that wants to speak? Anybody else? Okay, if not, roll call vote was requested. Yes or no?
Resolution passes 22 yes, 1 no. Resolution 83 from the Finance and Administration Committee, a resolution authorizing Kenosha County to enter into the settlement agreements with Teva Pharmaceuticals Industries Ltd., Allergan Finance LLC, Walgreen Company, Walmart Inc., CVS Health Corporation, and CVS Pharmacy Inc. Agree to the terms of the addendum to the MOU allocating settlement proceeds and authorize entry into the MOU with the Attorney General. This resolution passed unanimously at committee. Supervisor Grady excused.
Supervisor Rose.
I move the resolution.
Moved by Supervisor Rose, second by Supervisor Stoker. Supervisor Rose.
If you recall, the county received initially on a similar resolution some $8,300,000. While we do know the exact amount that will be received under this resolution, we're hopeful that it'll be about $2 million or more.
That's all. Okay. Any other supervisor? Any comments? Any comments? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
Resolution 84 from the Finance and Administration Committee, a resolution to approve the appointment of Ms. Nancy Kemp to the Kenosha County Library System Board. This resolution passed at committee 4-2. Supervisors Rose, Geertsen, Decker, and Bashaw voting aye. Supervisors Poole and Stocker voting nay. Supervisor Grady excused.
Supervisor Rose.
The nominee was endorsed by the committee. I move the resolution.
Moved by Supervisor Rose, second by Supervisor Gersten. Supervisor Rose.
The nominee appeared before the committee, responded to questions, and the majority of the committee endorsed the nominee for the position.
Any comments? Supervisor Stoker.
This appointment requires a quick review of history. This board has approved spending over $1.8 million so that our residents can have access to the public library. The person who oversees and is responsible for this is the city head librarian. The head librarian is an employee and has done the following things. Sent out a survey to people running for office in the 2022 election cycle. Posted no guns allowed signs on library doors when that was not true. Has promoted We Read banned books. And I strongly suggest you visit that website to see what kind of books those are. and is strongly promoting the NEA Big Read, which graphically describes the rape of a young girl. And if you read that and then you think that maybe there are rapists in Kenosha that could read that and get stirred to act out on it, it's a scary thought. The head librarian has refused two invites to meet with the executive committee and present her reasons for doing these things. My concern is that she's promoting things. I'm not trying to say they can't have the books in the library. Let's make that clear. When asked, do you support this behavior, Nancy Kemp answered that she did not see the relevance. Well, let me explain the relevance. The head librarian has refused to acknowledge the oversight of this county board, and Nancy Kemp has joined her by the answers she provided. Tonight is an opportunity to take back some of the oversight that we have entrusted to the wrong people. Therefore, I will be voting no on this appointment and urge my fellow supervisors to vote no as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just would like a clarification. Ms. Kemp refused to come to the meeting, or the head librarian refused to come to the meeting? Or is that the same person? I'm lost.
No, I'm sorry. The head librarian is not Nancy Kemp. The head librarian is somebody else. But the head librarian didn't come, and when Nancy Kemp was asked about that, she said she didn't see the relevance. And her being on the library board, being a part of the library system, it seems like that would be an important part of her job.
Thank you.
Any other supervisor? Any other supervisor? Seeing none, all in favor? Roll call. Roll call.
Resolution passes 19 yes, 4 no. Resolution 85 from the Public Works and Finance and Administration Committees, a resolution authorizing the Director of Parks to apply for grant funding from the WISDOT, which will be used for completing a feasible study for the Midwest Interstate Trail. This resolution passed unanimously at both committees. Supervisor Grady excused.
Supervisor Nordman.
Move resolution 85.
Moved by Supervisor Nordman, second by Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Nordman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This resolution allows us to apply for a grant that be for a feasibility study of about 4 miles of a bike path in Town of Randall and Village of Twin Lakes. Most of that is on private land that we do not have to buy. And it would be, I guess it'd be Eastman. I could be wrong on that. But the grant is for $100,000, and of which the county would be obligated to match about 20% of this. When the bike trails are finished, I think we're looking at about total around 8 miles when you look at how they may connect up into Lake and McHenry counties. That's also going to allow to use the already existing bike trails and the new ones that they're putting in time to have a pretty substantial bike path off road to a bike path, multi-use path in some areas. So I urge all those who are in favor of the great outdoors and biking to support this resolution. Thank you.
Okay. Any supervisor comments? Any supervisor comments? Seeing none, this requires a 2/3 vote, so we're going to have a roll call.
Resolution 85 passes unanimously. Resolution 86 from the Public Works and Finance and Administration Committees, a resolution authorizing the Director of Parks to apply for grant funding from Wisconsin DNR for Pets Park improvements. Resolution passed unanimously at both committees with Supervisor Grady excused.
Supervisor Norton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Move resolution number 86.
Moved by Supervisor Norton, second by Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Norton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The application for this grant would help us fund the phase 3 of the Pike River restoration, where we would be looking at multi-use trail, replace pedestrian bridge connecting parking lots 1 and 2. The grant would fund about 50% of the $490,200 project. The county would be obligated for half of that, or about $245,100. I respectfully ask for this to be supported by all. Thank you.
Any comments? Any comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes. Before we go to the next one, is everybody okay in taking about 5 minutes break? If not, I gotta take one anyway, so. So we're gonna recess for 5 minutes. Okay, we're back, and I believe everybody feels better.
Resolution 87 from the Public Works and Finance and Administration Committees, a resolution authorizing the Director of Parks to apply for grant funding from Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources for Veterans Memorial Park improvements. The resolution passed unanimously at both committees. Supervisor Grady excused.
Supervisor Norton.
Move resolution 87.
Moved by Supervisor Norton, second by Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Norton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is again an application for another grant. This resolution would get us to fund the 6 memorial shelters that represent each military branch of the armed forces at the Kenosha County Veterans Memorial Park. The grant would be funded, will fund about 50% of the $320,000 project. Kenosha County would be obligated for half, or $160,000. I urge everyone to support this.
Any other comments? Any other comments? Seeing none, this requires 2/3 vote. Of a roll call.
Resolution 87 passes unanimously. Resolution 88 from the Public Works and Finance and Administration Committees, a resolution to accept $100,000 from Flint Development for the wear and tear of County Trunk Highway MB between State Trunk Highway 142 and County Trunk Highway E due to the construction traffic from the Flint Development Project along County Trunk Highway E. This resolution passed unanimously at both committees. Supervisor Grady excused.
Supervisor Norton.
Move resolution 88.
Moved by Supervisor Norton, second by Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Norton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The resolution is pretty much as was laid out by Reggie. This resolution would allow our highway commissioner to accept $100,000 on behalf of the county, not himself, for the eventual wear and tear of County Highway MB. So a little bit of discussion took place as to, well, if there's any more than 100,000 that gets damaged, can we go back to them? How do we come up with 100,000? Basically, it was a number that was agreed upon, and that's it. There won't be any more money should there be more than $100,000 damage. I believe, though, they don't believe there'll be enough damage that we need to do something right away. It may just come in due time whenever that road eventually gets to the point where it needs to be renovated. So I urge everyone's support on this. Thank you.
Any comments? Any comments? Seeing none. Also, this one is a 2/3 vote.
Resolution 88 passes unanimously. Resolution 89 from the Public Works and Finance and Administration Committees, a resolution to approve leasing the highway storage yard to the Achievement Center Western KC Transit Service. This resolution passed unanimously at both committees. Supervisor Grady excused.
Supervisor Norton.
Move resolution 89.
Moved by Supervisor Norton, second by Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Norton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This resolution allows for the release of the available space at the Kenosha County Storage Yard Building to the Kenosha Achievement Center for the storage of the 3 Western Kenosha County Transit buses. The lease would be a nominal fee, about $1 a year, and is located at the county's pit on Highway C in Randall. So currently this is a fairly vacant pole building that we have plenty of room that we could house these in. The Kenosha Achievement Center is basically funded by the county, so it's just a place where we can store these vehicles and hopefully get a little more life out of them because they are stored properly. I urge your approval. Thank you.
Any comments? Any comments? Seeing none? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes.
Resolution 90 from the Public Works and Finance and Administration Committees, a resolution to repurpose ARPA funds from County Trunk Highway S project to the County Trunk Highway EM project. Resolution passed unanimously at both committees. Supervisor Grady excused.
Supervisor Norton.
Move resolution 90.
Moved by Supervisor Norton, second by Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Norton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Due to the scope change and labor increases to the County Highway EM project, there was an increase of $1,188,000 to the budgeted amount. So we're asking to repurpose the ARPA funds that were going to be used on Highway S and move them over to Highway EM. Now, Twin Lakes is picking up part of this increase as well. They originally budgeted $250,000 to help fund this, and they have increased that to $591,000. So the actual net amount that the county will come up with from these ARPA repurpose funds is $847,000. This project is a very important project for the area, and I do ask for your support. Thank you.
Supervisor Gates.
Thank you. How come there was such a big miss on that?
Supervisor.
1.1, I mean,
Yes.
we've had them where even up to a few thousand, that's a huge miss. What happened with that?
Right, and I have, we do have Director of Public Works here. I don't know if Clemens here, but from the discussions we've all had, there was more drainage that was required based on the scope of the work. And that was a tremendous amount. And believe me, we all kind of sat back and wondered what we were going to do here. The work that was, and I questioned it too, how come that wasn't found out at the beginning? And I don't know that they quite knew everything that was going on out there. And it's a very difficult road, and widen it so they can get proper people, enough areas so people can safely walk on the sides of the roads, and getting the, those are all around Lake Mary and Lake Elizabeth. So those drainages had to be properly done, and they found out they needed more as these came about. Now, I'm not an expert, I'm not the engineer, but I'm more than happy to have, if Director Billingsley would like to, if she has anything to add to that.
I mean, I don't, at the end, when you say, hey, we sat down and sat back and said, hey, we have to find this money, I get that.
Yeah.
But how do you miss that all along? That's a huge miss. Somebody needs to explain that.
I'd like to, before Supervisor Billingsley, let me ask Supervisor Carroll. He's a civil engineer. He has, from the Twin Lakes side as well, was involved in this. That's okay.
If it's okay, Supervisor Carroll wanted to speak next, then can I have him? Okay, then if you want to add anything, I'll come back to you. Supervisor Carroll.
I was hoping to help answer Supervisor Gens's question a little bit more and support Supervisor Morgan in response here. Because I sit on the village board of Twin Lakes as well, you can see that our participation more than doubled in this. So there was a lot of the same questions at our board meeting as well. So I had some extensive meetings with Clement and with Len Recker, or Ari Smith, the engineer who developed the estimate originally, and we asked those exact questions. I don't have at my fingertips the breakdown that the village board had that Clement had sent to us to show the board where the changes happened, but basically the storm drainage part of this on the original estimate was rough numbers here, around $1 million in the original estimate. The new cost when it came back in was close to $2 million. So a lot of that is in the storm drainage in itself. A lot of the storm drainage is dictated by the the reduction in total suspended solids in the runoff from the road. When you start widening the pavement and taking up a little bit more extra space along the sides, things like that, and the lakes being right there, the DNR had a say in it, and the storm sewer system is designed to remove 40% of the total suspended solids from stormwater runoff on that, and I don't believe that was anticipated at the beginning. The other side of this is that there was some additional widening that's taking place. So when you strip out the additional cost for the drainage and you strip out the cost for the additional widening on it, the initial budget lines up with itself pretty closely. So another factor on this was that the community, the area, asked for the project to be done as quickly as possible, and so there was a time frame on the construction from March 1st through June 15th for a completion on it of almost a $4 million project. So the thought is that there's some additional costs and overtime in there to get the project done before all the residents in the area really make it a challenging project to get completed. So those are the explanations that I was given and that I found out for myself as I looked into where the costs were coming from.
Okay, so you're saying that there was more overtime and more other things added, and then you added more walkways, and what is the timeline for this? I mean, I know it's late, but that's a big miss. This bothers me. I mean, what is the timeline on this? When did we know this? When did we know we were going to be $1 million plus short?
Sorry. Mr. Chairman, could we ask Director Billingsley, she probably have a better idea of that.
I don't have the exact timeline on me. I know it was a bit rough. I'm trying to look at here when we had that meeting, maybe a month and a half ago, and we were working with the village to ensure that the costs increases would be covered on their half as well. Supervisor Carroll was correct on all of the costs increases that we looked at. I came in at kind of the end of the bid package, so we went through with R.E. Smith on the cost increases that we saw and why they were increased from what they had submitted as far as their cost estimates. And he is correct, the majority of it was on the storm sewer aspect of it and the requirements of the DNR for stormwater quality control that was impacted due to the widening of the road. So that's pretty much the increase in cost for these large chambers that had to be installed under the roadway surface.
When did we get the original bid?
I want to say it's a month and a half ago. I can look back.
That's it? A month and a half ago?
So that, from what I recall, it was in. Sorry.
Okay. Were you going? I'm sorry. You were going to answer that?
I have some additional information, if so, shows that through the chair to Supervisor Gens. The timeline that I recall is that the bids were received sometime mid to late December, and that the evaluation of those was in early January. The project was in design through most of 2022. So then the Village of Twin Lakes considered it at I believe their January meeting to do for the additional funding on their part, per the memorandum of understanding.
You're saying that this was all through 2022?
That was the design phase.
Okay. And we didn't find out till a month ago that we missed it by that much. That's what you're telling me. Then you went to Twin Lakes and you went to us and you said, how do we find the money? Is that what happened?
That's my understanding. I was alerted to the costs. There were 4 competitive bids that were within a couple percent of one another in early January.
Okay, I'm just going to drop this, but I'm just going to tell you that I'm really disappointed that the engineering didn't catch this or something didn't catch this, where we're $1 million short. I understand materials, labor go up, but overtime and stuff, we should have known how much pavement we were going to do, where we were going to go with it. That's not an acceptable thing. We're stewards of the county's money, and that's not right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor Rodriguez. My question was answered. Thank you.
Supervisor Grady.
Thank you. I can just give you a little bit of background. This actually does go back some time further than what was mentioned here this evening. When this was originally proposed, and this is back during my tenure when I chaired the Public Works Committee, it was the idea of just getting pedestrian traffic off of that highway so there wouldn't be pedestrian car interactions. And at the initial outset, it was done as a bare bones minimum type thing on how to just do some of the most, shall we say, egregious or areas where there was very, very little wiggle room for a pedestrian to get off the roadway, just the bare bone basics. Then as time went along, after conferring with the Village of Twin Lakes, we're saying, well, that's good, but what about this area? What about this area? If we kick in some money, would you consider expanding the scope of the project? And we're talking, this is now better part of, I think, a year and a half, 2 years ago. And again, I'm relying from memory. You can't hold me specifically to it. It's just working through my recollection. So the county, Director Arby said, yes, we'll entertain that. Why don't you say what you're willing to bring to the table? They did. We'll re-engineer this project, so we're going to do it right for the entire length of the project, not just piecemeal it here and there. Let's proceed. So that is the differential that we've had several different go-arounds, not only with the DNR weighing in and saying, okay, you have sediment, you have culverts, you have the type of thing. The entire scope of the project changed from just addressing piecemeal to go from the start to the finish and do it right. So that's my recollection. That's what I can offer to you this evening.
Thank you. Any other comments? Any other comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes. Yeah, so we're gonna go to ordinance number 13.
Ordinance one reading, ordinance 13 from the Planning, Development, and Extension Education Committee, and ordinance regarding Daniel H. and Julie P. Rovers, owner, Meyer Material Company, DBA Lafarge Aggregates, Illinois, Inc., agent, requesting an amendment to the comprehensive plan amendment from farmland protection and isolated natural resource area to extractive farmland protection and isolated natural resource area, town of Wheatland. The ordinance passed unanimously at committee.
Supervisor Carroll.
Move ordinance 13.
Moved by Supervisor Carroll, second by Supervisor Kubicki. Supervisor Carroll.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman Nudo. This is the same as Resolution 82. This is for the comprehensive amendment to the comprehensive plan for the non-metallic mine expansion at the Daniel and Julie Rovers property. We had some extensive discussion on this previously and asked for the support of the board tonight on this ordinance.
Any comments? Any comments? Roll call was requested.
Ordinance 13 passes, 22 yes, 1 no. Ordinance 12 from the Planning, Development, and Extension Education Committee, an ordinance regarding Daniel H. and Julie P. Rovers, owner, Meyer Material Company, DBA Lafarge Aggregates, Illinois, Inc., agent, requesting a rezoning from A1 Agricultural Preservation District and C2 Upland Resource Conservancy District to M3 Mineral Extraction District, A1 Agricultural Preservation District, and C2 Upland Resource Conservancy District in the town of Wheatland. This ordinance passed unanimously at committee.
Supervisor Carroll.
Move ordinance 12.
Moved by Supervisor Carroll, second by Supervisor Franco. Supervisor Carroll.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Nudo. Now that the board has passed the amendment to the comprehensive plan, this is the rezoning to allow the non-metallic mine in the district there. Again, this was discussed with at length earlier this evening. with resolution number 82. I ask for the board support in passing this ordinance tonight.
Any comments? Any comments? Seeing none, roll call is requested.
Supervisor Franco. Ordinance 12 passes, 22 yes, 1 no. Ordinance 1 reading, 2 required. Ordinance 14 from the Public Works and Facilities Committee, an ordinance to ordain the conversion of a 4-way stop at County Trunk Highway F and County Trunk Highway O. Ordinance 15 from the Judiciary and Law Enforcement and Finance Administration Committees, an ordinance amendment to Chapter 4 Municipal Code of Kenosha County, the Civil Service Ordinance. Communications, 69, communications from Andy M. Bueller regarding future items scheduled before the Planning, Development, and Extension Education Committee.
Received and filed.
70, communication from Judiciary and Law Enforcement Committee, a memorandum of understanding regarding contract with Wisconsin DOT, reimbursement of deputy sheriff wages for traffic control during the State Trunk Highway 50 reconstruction project in Paddock Lake.
Refer to Judiciary and Law Committee.
Communication 71, communication from the Finance and Administration Committee, the presentation of the final results and recommendations of the classification and comprehensive study conducted by Carlson Dietmar or Dietman Consulting. Excuse me.
Refer to Finance Committee.
72, communication from Vice Chair Decker, Supervisor Rodriguez, and Supervisor Poole. A resolution recognizing April 9th through the 15th of 2023 as National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week.
Refer to Executive Committee.
Communication 73 from Supervisor Bashaw, a resolution on a renewable future for Kenosha County, encouraging the strategic development of renewable energy resources in Kenosha County and requesting the state legislature to identify sustainable strategies for such development that maintains the natural character and environment of the state of Wisconsin.
Refer to Executive and Legislative Committee. Supervisor Bashaw, you got your line up?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for recognizing me. Mr. Chairman, I move that we suspend the rules for the reason that I have recognized that this will not complete the committee process, as we will adjourn Sendai prior to it finalizing.
Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Gersten. This is a non-debatable, and it takes 2/3 vote. So vote yes to suspend the rules.
If I may, just to clarify, what you're asking to suspend the rules so that it can come back to the board.
Correct.
Without going to committee.
Come directly back to the board rather than committee so that we can complete the process in a timely manner. This is an advisory resolution that will be pressed to the state and others, and it's a hot topic in the state right now. So.
Okay. All in favor say yeah. Yes.
It will come back. The date stamp on that would be at the next county board meeting, and it takes 2 readings. So we'll hit the next 2 subsequent meetings.
Okay.
If we vote yes on this, does that mean it doesn't go to committee at all?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes. Communication 73 from Supervisor Bashaw. Would you like me?
Go ahead.
Through the chair to Supervisor Bashaw. What is your reason again for not wanting to?
It's not the bad. Not the bad.
Oh, it's not, I can't even.
Okay? All right, all in favor to suspend the rules? What, yes?
So that required a 2/3 vote,
Yes.
so the motion fails. Correct?
All right, so 73 will go to executive and legislative.
I'd like to state how it fails. There's 13 that voted yes, 10 voted no, and there was a required 18 in order to pass. 16, excuse me. Claims 23, Eric Quintana. Personal property loss.
Refer to corporation.
The approval of the March 7th, 2023 minutes by Supervisor Rose.
Supervisor Rose.
I will move the approval of the minutes.
Moved by Supervisor Rose, second by Supervisor Rodriguez. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion to adjourn, anybody? Presented by Supervisor Gillespie, second by Supervisor Rodriguez. All in favor? Opposed? We're adjourned.